Hello and welcome to Economy and Markets TV, the show that takes you around the world of economic and financial news. I'm your host, Dave Okenquist, Senior Research Analyst here at Dent. Happy to be back with all of you again for the weekly news recap. I'm joined, as always, by Rodney Johnson. Rodney's the Senior Editor and Co-Founder of Dent Research. Rodney, thanks for filling in for me last week.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I mean, it was good to be on that side. I didn't have to ding myself with that bell.
I know. I should have snuck in and found a way to just ring a bell on you or something like that. Actually, I was away last week, so it was hard for me to keep up with a lot of things. So it really was beneficial for me to get that 8 minutes and just that's really all I needed. So that was really great stuff, especially from my perspective. So I hope all of you are enjoying it as much as I did. Maybe
you could take the rest of the week off and just do this and be done, right? You could only work 8 minutes a week.
That's a great deal. If it's your first time watching the show, Rodney and I highlight the most important news items of the week, and we try to keep things moving at about 2 minutes. If Rodney goes over 2 minutes, I ring this bell, and that means it's time to move on. So with that, let's get to our first topic, Rodney. Factory orders. They fell 0.8%, dragged down by volatile aircraft. So you said in the copy, you said they rose 60%, 15% in the last 2 months, but then they fell 30%. That sounds like a really volatile thing, right?
Right.
It does seem like for good news, capital goods are up 1%. So that's some business spending. So that sounds like good news for the economy, isn't it?
It is. As you mentioned, aircraft orders, no pun intended, go up and down. And the reason is because you don't order aircraft every week, not even every month. And so when aircraft companies like Boeing get an order, they're big. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. And so they drive these factory order numbers back and forth because they're so chunky as they come in through the system. But if you look at it over a number of months, we've had rising aircraft orders in general, which is good. You want aircraft companies to make money. But if you pull that out, we've got some pretty good numbers underneath. And you mentioned capital spending, capital investment. That's factory orders pulling out aircraft and pulling out defense spending, because, of course, the Defense Department spends a lot of money. And so it's seen as a proxy for business spending. And as you said, that was up about 1%. So that is good. I mean, we had the tax cut, and we can't forget that. The tax cut put a lot of money into corporate coffers, and so they have more cash. To see factory orders pop a little bit for business spending, that's good. It's certainly not all the money that came through for the tax reform. A lot's being used to buy back shares. I don't think it's going to drive the economy up dramatically, but it is good to see.
Okay. Yeah. Well, looking into this is really just going to be about GDP, right? We're talking about this kind of growth. Just the Atlanta Fed's GDP now, which is their estimate of second quarter GDP. They kind of track this as news releases go. They have it at 4.5%. Now we've seen this story before where it starts off really high and then sort of trends down into we get our like 2 point something, right? But 4.5, it's at least good news, right? If it's going to come down from a high level.
It is good, but to be fair to the Atlanta Fed, they track this in real time, and so they're looking at the numbers as they come in. What's interesting about the Atlanta GDP Now number is that it's so high at 4.5 this late in the quarter. Because we only have, 22 days left in the second quarter. Yeah. And so for their numbers to still be over 4% is interesting. We should see GDP somewhere over 3% for this quarter, certainly a bump from the 2.3% in the first quarter. But again, I don't extrapolate that out. I think it comes back off after that. Yeah. And then we go back to the same moderate growth we've had.
All right. Great stuff there. All right. Let's move on to our next topic. Oil inventory rose 2.1 million barrels. Yep. We now have 436.6 million barrels of oil. I have no idea what that number means. It sounds like that's a lot of oil. That's the best I can approximate. I have no way of putting that in my mind of how much that is, but that's 15% less than last year. I remember a couple of weeks ago we saw a drawdown, so it sounds like things are reversing a little bit and we're ramping up production.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to write because the words get weird, but we have a smaller reduction over last year than before. Whereas, about a month ago, we were sitting at 20% less than a year ago, so the drawdown was bigger. Now we're building back. As you say, we added some oil, a couple million barrels, and so we're at 15% less. We're at about 436 million barrels. The inventory goes up and down depending on the season. And so you spend the fall and spring seasons building inventory, and then you spend really the summer months drawing it down. And we change grades of oil, and so our blends rather for winter and summer for environmental concerns. And so what we have right now is factories, or rather refineries, running at over 95%, which is an amazing run rate. And they're building that inventory as we go through the high drive season.
What's a typical capacity, Rodney?
Typical capacity is 91, 92. You'll see it drop into the 80s when we go into this kind of the early spring in April, because you see refiners retooling from winter blend to summer blend.
I see.
And if you get a big push during those times, or a big change in weather, then you'll see inventory drop a lot. And so it's interesting to note that we have inventory building here. Oil's still around $65 a barrel. And so what you're seeing is American companies able to push out a lot of oil, which is great. What we've done with that, of course, is now sell it overseas. We're exporting oil. We exported 20 million barrels last month. And so that's an amazing number. We're walking up the amount that we're exporting now that we're free to do that. That reduces our trade deficit because we're selling it to other people and capturing, of course, the currency. And so energy continues to build as a more important part of our economy. And I think that's going to be the story for many years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting that the administration, our policymakers, are trying to boost exports, trying to do what they can to make all these deals. Here's this oil thing. This is the easy one.
It's just walking away, right?
Yeah.
And you look at it, we export to, the friendly countries. We export a lot to Mexico. We're exporting to people who are fairly near to us, fairly close, particularly in the distillates. And so it's interesting to see how the roles have reversed and to watch that trend happen. And we're going to be, as they say, energy independent numerically within 5 years.
Yeah. Excellent stuff. I say just get out of the way, right? Let it happen.
Exactly. Let us do our job.
Yeah. Great stuff there. Let's move on to our final topic. This one's a bit worrisome. Social Security they're now running at a deficit. They're going to be, this is the first time in 30 years that this has happened. They're going to be insolvent by 2034. You also have Medicare, you mentioned in the copy, Rodney, by 2026. Yes. This sounds really scary. Should people at home that are watching this, is this the kind of news that they should be worried about? It does sound really kind of nuts. How are we going to get through this?
They should be worried, but perhaps for not the reason that you would think from the headline. It's not as if Social Security goes bankrupt and then, hey, guess what? You don't get any check this month. That's not going to happen.
Okay.
What's going to happen is when Medicare runs out of the trust fund around 2026 that it has, it won't be able to pay 100% of the expected benefits. But through the taxes still coming in, it'll be able to pay around 90%. Social Security runs out around 2033, 34. It'll be able to pay about 75% of the benefits expected with the taxes coming in. So it doesn't go to zero. Here's what should really concern people, though. We've all known this. None of this is a surprise. As you say, it's the first time since really the 80s that this has happened, but it's been numerically the case for a very long time. And yet we don't fix it. And the fix is really straightforward. There are only three things you can do. You can lower the benefits that you pay by paying people less of a benefit, by paying some people no benefit, otherwise known as means testing. Does Warren Buffett really need Social Security? He's never filed for it, by the way, but he is eligible. Should you pull that back? And the question becomes where? Do you raise taxes for Social Security and Medicare, or some combination? Lower benefits, higher taxes, combination. Those are the only choices. And we can't do that. The fact that we can't figure out something that's so clear really doesn't give you hope for all the murkier, harder things that we have to accomplish in this country.
Crazy. Well, on the positive side, not only are we able to cover a news topic in less than 2 minutes, we are able to solve the Social Security crisis in less than 2 minutes.
We can certainly point out the solution. It doesn't make it fun or easy, but it makes it very straightforward.
Yeah, simple but hard. And I think there's no, where's the will for it? So that means we're just going to wait until there's no choice but to act, and we'll get a bad deal for everybody. Probably, right? Yeah. Rodney, there was one last thing you wanted to mention. It was something about Elon Musk, who I think is not a feature of the show, although we do talk about him a lot. What's going on with Elon Musk? And there's something about Mercedes as well, right?
Yeah, they're related. Elon Musk and Tesla had a shareholder vote, and he was reaffirmed as both the CEO and the chairman of the board.
Right.
And so there was a movement inside among the shareholders to perhaps put in an outside chairman of the board to kind of run herd over Elon Musk. The fact that he was affirmed as both gave the stock a boost. Arguable as to why, he can continue with his vision. Yeah. My problem is his vision. He's clearly a visionary in terms of looking at possibilities and new ideas, but we lose sight of the fact that the company runs at an incredible loss. I mean, just a phenomenal loss every quarter. It's had a little bit of profit here and there, but that's based on these tax rebates. It's getting close to the 200,000 units at which these tax rebates go away, and it is no closer to actually making money And while it's kind of moving along here, telling a good story, its competitors like Mercedes are coming out with all electric vehicles. Mercedes delivery date looks like it's going to be June of next year. From Jaguar has a car, the I-Pace, that's supposed to be on the roads this fall. They're taking orders for it right now. And so while Tesla's getting a lot of news and people love it and the stock is high to the point where it's valued more than General Motors, who sells millions of cars, the competitors are marching along. And within 2 years, you're going to see a lot of electric vehicles from Mercedes, BMW, Porsche, Jaguar, and others. And they're going to, I believe, eat Tesla's lunch.
Oh, well, swim or die, Tesla. That's it.
Yep.
Excellent stuff there. All right, Rodney, looking ahead to next week, we've got consumer prices, CPI. We also have retail sales. And what else do we got here? We've got, let's see, do we have U.S. employment coming up as well?
No, the little thing about the Fed.
Oh, that was
Federal Reserve.
the FOMC meeting. Yeah. So a preview of rates. Do you have any predictions of what's going on there?
I think they're going to raise rates. Remember, we're looking at maximum employment and moderate long-term prices, which is another word for, or another way of describing inflation. And so unemployment, here we are at 3.8%. They got to feel really good about that. Prices have been kind of, muddling along at 1.8 to 2.1%. Their preferred measure is sitting at 1.9.
Yeah.
And so I think they're going to be very comfortable raising rates. I think they changed the language a little bit to say, hey, we've done it. We've got 3 in the bag. We're going to stand aside and kind of see how things go.
Excellent, Rodney. Looking forward to hearing that news and joining with you next week. I want to thank all of you for watching. Rodney, thank you again for filling in last week and being on with me today. Hope you all have a great day.